Marcus Chen had always been the quiet kid in school. While other teenagers were playing football or chasing girls, he spent his evenings in his grandfather's workshop, learning to fix radios and building computers from spare parts. His grandfather, a former Marine who fought in Korea, taught him that intelligence was just as valuable as strength, maybe more so. When Marcus turned 18, he surprised everyone by enlisting in the Navy. His parents thought he was crazy. His friends couldn't believe the skinny computer nerd wanted to join the military, but Marcus had a plan that nobody understood yet. Basic training was brutal. Marcus struggled with the physical demands, while recruits half his age seemed to breeze through everything. The drill instructors noticed his technical skills, though. While other sailors were still figuring out basic electronics, Marcus was already helping repair communication equipment that experienced technicians couldn't fix. After completing his initial training, Marcus applied for advanced technical schools. He earned certifications in electronics, communications, and computer systems. His test scores were so high that recruiters from various special operations units started paying attention. The opportunity came during his second year of service. A notice went out across the fleet looking for volunteers to participate in a joint training exercise with Navy SEALs. The mission would involve testing new communication and surveillance equipment in realistic combat scenarios. Marcus saw his chance and immediately volunteered. When he arrived at the training facility in Virginia Beach, Marcus felt completely out of place. The other volunteers were mostly experienced sailors with impressive military records. Many had already completed special warfare training or came from elite units. Marcus looked around and realized he was probably the least experienced person there. The SEALs running the exercise were legends in the special operations community. Lieutenant Commander Jake "Hammer" Rodriguez had completed multiple deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq. Chief Petty Officer Mike "Tank" Johnson was built like his nickname suggested and had a reputation for being nearly indestructible. Petty Officer First Class Danny "Ghost" Williams was known for his stealth and reconnaissance skills. During the initial briefing, the SEALs explained that they would be conducting a week-long exercise simulating a hostage rescue mission in urban terrain. The volunteers would be divided into teams and given various support roles, including communications, intelligence gathering, and equipment testing. When Marcus introduced himself to the group, several of the SEALs exchanged glances and barely suppressed grins. Here was this young sailor who looked like he belonged in a college computer lab rather than on a battlefield. His uniform was perfectly pressed, his boots were shined, but he clearly hadn't seen much action. "So, Chen," Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez said with a slight smirk, "what makes you think you can keep up with this kind of training?" Marcus straightened his shoulders and met the officer's gaze. "I believe I can contribute unique skills to the mission, sir." Several of the SEALs chuckled. Chief Johnson shook his head and muttered something about desk jockeys to the sailor next to him. The first day of training focused on basic tactical movement and communication procedures. The teams were required to navigate through a mock urban environment while maintaining radio contact and gathering intelligence on simulated enemy positions. Marcus was assigned to Team Bravo, along with 3 other sailors and 2 SEALs. As they prepared their equipment, he noticed that the standard radio systems they were using had significant limitations. The frequencies were easily intercepted, and the range was limited in the concrete and steel environment of the training facility. During the exercise, Team Bravo quickly ran into problems. Their communications kept cutting out as they moved through the buildings. The SEALs grew frustrated as they lost contact with command and other teams. "This equipment is garbage," Chief Johnson complained after losing radio contact for the 3rd time in an hour. Marcus had been quietly observing the communication failures. He had identified several technical issues that were causing the problems, but he hesitated to speak up. These were elite warriors with years of experience, and he was just a junior technician. The exercise continued poorly for Team Bravo. They missed several key objectives because they couldn't coordinate effectively with other units. By the end of the day, the team's performance was ranked last among all participating groups. That evening, as the teams gathered for debriefing, the atmosphere was tense. The SEALs were clearly disappointed with the day's results, and several of them seemed to blame the equipment failures on the volunteers' inexperience with the gear. "Maybe we should stick to volunteers who actually know what they're doing," one of the SEALs commented, loud enough for everyone to hear. Marcus felt his face burning with embarrassment, but he also felt frustrated. He knew exactly what was causing the communication problems, and he had ideas for how to fix them. That night, while the other volunteers relaxed or prepared for the next day, Marcus stayed up late in the equipment bay. Using his personal toolkit and some spare components he had brought with him, Marcus began modifying the radio systems. He adjusted frequencies, upgraded antenna configurations, and wrote new software protocols to improve signal clarity and range. The work was delicate and time-consuming. Marcus had to be careful not to damage any military equipment, but he also wanted to demonstrate what was possible with some creative problem-solving. His grandfather's lessons echoed in his mind. Sometimes the best weapon is the one nobody sees coming. By 3 in the morning, Marcus had successfully modified 3 complete radio systems. The improvements were subtle but significant. The new configurations would provide better range, clearer signals, and enhanced security features that would make communications much harder to intercept. The next morning arrived with typical military punctuality. The teams assembled for day 2 of the exercise, which would involve more complex scenarios including simulated enemy interference with communications. As Team Bravo prepared their equipment, Marcus quietly swapped out their standard radios for the modified systems he had worked on during the night. He didn't mention the changes to anyone, wanting to see if the improvements would be noticeable in actual use. The day's scenario involved a multi-phase operation where teams had to coordinate movements across several buildings while enemy forces attempted to disrupt their communications. Previous teams had struggled significantly with this exercise due to the communication challenges. As Team Bravo began their mission, something was immediately different. Their radio communications were crystal clear, even when moving through areas where other teams had experienced complete blackouts. The modified systems maintained strong signals and provided secure channels that couldn't be easily jammed. Chief Johnson noticed the difference right away. "How are we getting such clear signals in here?" he asked over the radio. Marcus keyed his microphone. "Just good equipment maintenance, Chief." The improved communications allowed Team Bravo to coordinate their movements perfectly. They completed their primary objectives quickly and efficiently, then moved on to secondary targets that other teams had been unable to reach due to communication failures. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez monitored the exercise from the command center and couldn't believe what he was seeing. Team Bravo was performing flawlessly, executing complex maneuvers that required precise timing and coordination. "What's different about Bravo Team?" Rodriguez asked the exercise controller. "Same personnel as yesterday, same basic equipment," the controller replied, checking his notes. As the exercise continued, word began to spread among the other teams and SEALs that something special was happening with Team Bravo's performance. Their communications were not only working perfectly, but seemed to be operating on a completely different level than the standard equipment. By the end of the second day, Team Bravo had completed every assigned objective and several bonus challenges. Their performance was ranked first among all teams, a complete reversal from the previous day's results. During the evening debriefing, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez addressed the group. Team Bravo showed remarkable improvement today. "I'm curious to know what changed between yesterday and today." Marcus felt all eyes turning toward him. The other members of Team Bravo looked puzzled because they hadn't noticed any obvious changes in their approach or equipment. Chief Johnson spoke up first. "Sir, our communications worked perfectly today. No interference, no dead zones, crystal clear signals throughout the entire exercise." "That's interesting," Rodriguez replied. Because every other team reported the same communication challenges today that everyone experienced yesterday. The room fell silent as the implication became clear. Something had definitely changed with Team Bravo's equipment, and all eyes were now focused on the quiet young sailor who had been working with the communication systems. Marcus realized that his moment of truth had arrived. He could either confess to modifying military equipment without authorization, which could result in serious disciplinary action, or he could try to deflect attention and hope nobody discovered what he had done. Looking around the room at the faces of some of the most elite warriors in the military, Marcus made his decision. His grandfather had taught him that integrity was more important than personal safety, and that the best leaders always took responsibility for their actions. "Sir," Marcus said, standing up slowly, "I modified our radio systems last night." The room erupted in surprised murmurs and shocked expressions. Several of the SEALs looked angry that a junior sailor had tampered with their equipment without permission. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez raised his hand for silence. "Explain exactly what you did, Petty Officer Chen." Marcus took a deep breath and began to describe the technical modifications he had made. He explained the frequency adjustments, antenna improvements, and software protocols he had implemented. As he spoke, he could see the expressions around the room changing from anger to curiosity. "You did all of this in one night?" Chief Johnson asked incredulously. "Yes, Chief. I identified the primary causes of our communication failures yesterday and developed solutions to address each problem." Rodriguez leaned forward in his chair. "And you felt qualified to modify military equipment without consulting anyone or requesting permission?" "No, sir," Marcus replied honestly. "I knew I was taking a risk, but I also knew I could improve our team's performance. And I thought the mission success was more important than following standard protocols." The room fell silent again as the SEALs processed this response. Here was a young sailor who had taken initiative to solve a critical problem, demonstrated exceptional technical skills, and accepted full responsibility for his unauthorized actions. "Show me exactly what you did," Rodriguez ordered. For the next hour, Marcus walked the group through each modification he had made to the radio systems. He explained the technical theory behind each improvement and demonstrated how the enhanced equipment performed compared to standard configurations. Several of the SEALs asked detailed questions about the modifications. They were clearly impressed by the sophistication of Marcus's work. But they were also concerned about the implications of a junior sailor making unauthorized changes to critical military equipment. As the briefing concluded, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez made an announcement that surprised everyone, including Marcus. "Petty Officer Chen, you will report to my office at 800 tomorrow morning. We need to have a serious discussion about your future in the Navy." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He had hoped that his successful modifications would be viewed positively, but Rodriguez's tone suggested that serious consequences were coming. That night, Marcus lay awake wondering if his military career was about to end before it really began. He had taken a calculated risk to prove his value to the special operations community, but it appeared that his gamble might have backfired spectacularly. The other volunteers gave him sympathetic looks but kept their distance. Nobody wanted to be associated with someone who might be facing disciplinary action for unauthorized equipment modifications. As Marcus stared at the ceiling, he thought about his grandfather's advice about taking responsibility for his actions. He didn't regret trying to improve their mission capabilities, but he wondered if there might have been a better way to demonstrate his skills without violating military protocols. The third day of training would bring new challenges, and Marcus wasn't sure if he would even be allowed to participate. His attempt to prove himself to the SEALs had certainly gotten their attention, but whether that attention would help or hurt his career remained to be seen. Marcus arrived at Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez's office at exactly 0800, his uniform immaculate, and his mind prepared for the worst. The office was spartanly decorated with military commendations, unit photographs, and a few personal items that spoke to years of distinguished service. Rodriguez gestured for Marcus to sit down across from his desk. The silence stretched uncomfortably as the senior officer reviewed a file that Marcus assumed contained his service record and details about the unauthorized equipment modifications. "Petty Officer Chen," Rodriguez began, his tone neutral and professional. "What you did last night could be considered destruction of military property, unauthorized modification of critical equipment, and violation of several Navy regulations." Marcus's heart sank, but he maintained his composure. "Yes, sir, I understand that. However," Rodriguez continued, "what you accomplished was also remarkable. The modifications you made improved our communication capabilities by approximately 300% according to our technical analysis." This unexpected praise caught Marcus off guard. He had been prepared for punishment, not recognition. Rodriguez leaned back in his chair and studied Marcus carefully. "Tell me about your background. How did you learn to do what you did last night?" Marcus explained his childhood spent in his grandfather's workshop, his passion for electronics and communications, and his decision to join the Navy specifically to work with advanced technology. He described his technical training and his desire to eventually work with special operations units. "Your test scores and technical evaluations are exceptional," Rodriguez noted, flipping through the file. "But test scores don't always translate to real-world performance. What you demonstrated last night shows practical problem-solving skills that can't be taught in a classroom." Rodriguez stood and walked to the window overlooking the training facility. "We have a problem in the special operations community. Our technology is advancing rapidly, but many of our operators don't have the technical expertise to fully utilize these new capabilities. We need people who can bridge that gap." Marcus remained silent, sensing that Rodriguez was building toward something important. "The exercise we're conducting this week isn't just about testing equipment," Rodriguez explained. "We're evaluating candidates for a new program that combines technical expertise with operational capabilities. We're looking for people who can think outside the box and adapt quickly to changing situations." Rodriguez returned to his desk and pulled out a classified folder. "What I'm about to tell you is sensitive information. The Navy is developing a new special operations support unit focused on communications, electronic warfare, and technical intelligence. We need sailors who can operate in the field with SEAL teams while providing advanced technical capabilities." Marcus felt a surge of excitement, but tried to maintain his professional demeanor. This sounded exactly like the kind of opportunity he had hoped for when he volunteered for the exercise. "The training program is extremely demanding," Rodriguez warned. "It combines advanced technical education with modified special warfare training. Many candidates don't make it through the program. Are you interested in being considered?" "Absolutely, sir," Marcus replied without hesitation. Rodriguez smiled for the first time during their conversation. "Good. But first, you need to complete this exercise and prove that last night wasn't just a lucky accident. The remaining scenarios will test your ability to think creatively under pressure." As Marcus left the office, he felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. Instead of ending his military career, his unauthorized modifications had opened doors to opportunities he hadn't even known existed. The third day of training brought the most challenging scenarios yet. The exercise simulated a hostage rescue operation in a multi-story building complex where enemy forces had sophisticated countermeasures against standard military communications and surveillance equipment. Previous iterations of this exercise had been nearly impossible to complete successfully because the simulated enemy forces could jam most electronic equipment and track standard military radio frequencies. Teams typically had to rely on hand signals and basic tactics, severely limiting their operational effectiveness. As Team Bravo prepared for the day's mission, Marcus realized that his radio modifications from the previous day wouldn't be sufficient for the new challenges. The enemy countermeasures were specifically designed to defeat the types of improvements he had already implemented. During the mission briefing, The exercise controllers explained that the enemy forces had access to military-grade jamming equipment and sophisticated surveillance systems. Any team attempting to complete the mission would need to overcome these electronic warfare capabilities while executing a complex tactical operation. Marcus listened carefully to the briefing and began formulating new approaches to the technical challenges. While the other team members focused on the tactical aspects of the mission, he was already thinking about ways to circumvent the enemy's electronic defenses. After the briefing, Marcus approached Chief Johnson with a proposal that initially seemed crazy. "Chief, what if we use the enemy's own surveillance systems against them?" Johnson looked skeptical. "What do you mean?" Marcus explained his idea to hack into the enemy's surveillance network and use their own cameras and sensors to gather intelligence about hostage locations and guard movements. It would require accessing enemy systems without detection, but it could provide crucial advantages for the rescue operation. "That sounds incredibly risky," Johnson said. "If they detect our intrusion, they'll know exactly where we are and what we're planning." "True," Marcus acknowledged. "But if we can pull it off, we'll have real-time intelligence that no other team has access to. We could complete the mission in half the time with minimal risk to hostages." Johnson considered the proposal for several minutes. As an experienced operator, he understood the value of good intelligence, but he also knew the dangers of untested techniques in critical situations. "Can you guarantee this will work?" Johnson asked. Marcus shook his head honestly. "No guarantees, Chief, but I believe the potential benefits outweigh the risks." After consulting with Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, who was observing the exercise from the command center, Johnson gave Marcus permission to attempt his electronic warfare approach. Working quickly before the mission began, Marcus modified several pieces of standard equipment to create improvised hacking tools. He used laptop computers, signal analyzers, and software he had written during his technical training to develop a system capable of penetrating enemy networks. The other members of Team Bravo watched with fascination and concern as Marcus assembled his unconventional equipment package. None of them had ever seen anything like what he was attempting to do. As the mission began, Team Bravo moved into position around the target building complex. Instead of immediately attempting to breach the building, Marcus deployed his electronic warfare equipment and began probing the enemy's surveillance systems. The hacking attempt was more difficult than he had anticipated. The enemy systems had multiple layers of security, and each penetration attempt risked triggering alarms that would compromise the entire mission. Marcus worked methodically through the enemy's defenses, using techniques he had learned from computer security courses and adapted for military applications. After 30 minutes of careful probing, he successfully gained access to the enemy's internal surveillance network. "I'm in," Marcus whispered into his radio. The intelligence windfall was immediate and overwhelming. Marcus could see camera feeds from throughout the building complex, showing the locations of all enemy guards and hostages. He could monitor their communications and track their movement patterns in real time. "Team Bravo, this is Chen," Marcus reported. "I have eyes on all hostage locations and guard positions. I can guide you through the building without detection." What followed was the most successful hostage rescue operation in the history of the training exercise. Marcus provided real-time intelligence that allowed Team Bravo to move through the complex like ghosts, avoiding enemy patrols and reaching hostage locations without triggering any alarms. The other teams participating in the exercise struggled with the same electronic warfare challenges that had made the scenario nearly impossible in previous iterations. They had to rely on traditional tactics and suffered heavy simulated casualties as a result. Team Bravo completed their mission in record time with 0 casualties and all hostages successfully rescued. The exercise controllers had to verify their results multiple times because the performance was so far beyond what they had expected. In the command center, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez and the other SEAL instructors watched the operation with amazement. They had never seen a training exercise completed so efficiently and effectively. "How is this possible?" asked Chief Johnson, who was monitoring the exercise from the command center. "Chen hacked their entire surveillance system," Rodriguez replied, reviewing the technical logs. "He's using their own equipment to provide intelligence for our operation." When Team Bravo emerged from the building complex with all objectives completed, the other teams and instructors gathered around to understand what had happened. The performance gap between Team Bravo and the other teams was so dramatic that it seemed like they had been participating in completely different exercises. During the debriefing, Marcus explained his electronic warfare techniques and demonstrated how he had penetrated the enemy surveillance systems. The SEAL instructors asked detailed technical questions and took extensive notes about his methods. Several of the instructors admitted that they had never considered using offensive cyber capabilities in this type of tactical scenario. Marcus's approach represented a completely new way of thinking about special operations in an increasingly electronic battlefield. "This changes everything," commented Master Chief Petty Officer Sarah Viper Thompson, a senior SEAL instructor who specialized in advanced tactics. "If we can reliably penetrate enemy electronic systems during operations, it opens up tactical possibilities we've never had before." The success of Marcus's electronic warfare techniques didn't go unnoticed by the other volunteers participating in the exercise. Several of them approached him after the debriefing to ask about his background and training. Marcus was surprised to discover that many of the other volunteers had technical skills that could complement his own capabilities. There was an aviation electronics technician who specialized in radar systems, a submarine sonar operator with expertise in acoustic surveillance, and a cryptologic technician with advanced knowledge of enemy communications protocols. That evening, Marcus found himself at the center of informal discussions about the future of special operations. The SEALs and volunteers talked about how rapidly advancing technology was changing the nature of warfare and creating new opportunities for small, highly skilled teams to achieve objectives that would previously have required much larger forces. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez joined these discussions and shared insights about the broader strategic challenges facing the special operations community. He explained that enemy forces were increasingly using sophisticated technology to defend against traditional military tactics, creating a need for operators who could think creatively about technical solutions. "What Marcus accomplished today represents the future of special operations," Rodriguez told the group. "We need people who can adapt quickly to new technology and find innovative ways to overcome enemy advantages." As the evening progressed, Marcus realized that his unauthorized equipment modifications and unconventional tactics had earned him respect from some of the most elite warriors in the military. The SEALs, who had initially laughed at the young technician, were now asking detailed questions about his techniques and expressing interest in learning more about electronic warfare capabilities. The transformation in how others viewed Marcus was remarkable, but he also understood that earning respect was only the first step. The real test would come in the final day of training, when all teams would face the most challenging scenario of the entire exercise. Master Chief Thompson approached Marcus as the group was preparing to conclude the evening discussion. "Chen, tomorrow's exercise will test everything you've learned this week. The scenario is designed to be nearly impossible to complete using conventional tactics. I'm curious to see what creative solutions you come up with." Marcus felt the weight of expectations settling on his shoulders. He had proven his technical capabilities and demonstrated innovative thinking, but tomorrow would determine whether he truly belonged among the elite special operations community. The quiet technician who had been laughed at just 3 days earlier was now being looked to as a potential game changer for the future of special warfare. The pressure was intense, but Marcus felt ready for whatever challenges the final exercise would bring. The final day of the exercise dawned gray and misty, creating an appropriately dramatic atmosphere for what everyone knew would be the ultimate test. Marcus woke before his alarm, his mind already racing through potential technical solutions for whatever challenges lay ahead. The final scenario briefing took place in a secure conference room with senior officers from multiple special operations units in attendance. This wasn't just a training exercise anymore. It had evolved into a demonstration of new capabilities that could reshape how the military approached complex operations. Captain Jennifer "Shark" Morrison, the overall commander of the Special Warfare Training Center, personally delivered the final briefing. Her presence indicated the importance that senior leadership was placing on the week's outcomes. Today's scenario simulates a high-value target rescue in an urban environment controlled by a technologically sophisticated enemy force, Captain Morrison began. The target is a captured intelligence officer being held in a fortified compound that represents the most challenging environment we've ever created for training purposes. The briefing continued with details that made Marcus's previous successes seem simple by comparison. The enemy force had access to military-grade jamming equipment, thermal imaging systems, motion sensors, communication intercepts, and artificial intelligence-assisted surveillance networks. They had also positioned the compound in a location that made traditional assault approaches nearly impossible. Previous attempts to complete this scenario using conventional tactics have resulted in mission failure rates exceeding 90%. Captain Morrison explained. The few successful operations required extensive resources and resulted in heavy casualties that would be unacceptable in real-world situations. Marcus studied the technical specifications of the enemy defenses and realized that his previous electronic warfare techniques would be insufficient for this scenario. The enemy systems were too sophisticated and well protected to be easily penetrated using conventional hacking approaches. As the teams prepared for the final exercise, Marcus found himself working with a different group composition. Instead of Team Bravo, he had been assigned to work directly with Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez and a hand-picked group of the most experienced SEALs and technical specialists. "This isn't about testing individual teams anymore," Rodriguez explained to Marcus privately. "This is about demonstrating whether your technical innovations can be integrated with elite tactical capabilities to achieve mission success in impossible situations." The pressure was enormous. Not only was Marcus representing his own capabilities, but the success or failure of the mission would influence whether the Navy moved forward with the new technical support program that Rodriguez had described. Marcus spent the morning working with the team to understand their tactical preferences and communication protocols. He was impressed by their professionalism and expertise, but he also realized that they were counting on him to provide technical capabilities that would make their mission possible. Chief Petty Officer Tank Johnson, who had initially been skeptical of Marcus's abilities, now served as the team's senior enlisted leader. His attitude toward Marcus had completely transformed over the course of the week. "Chen," Johnson said as they prepared their equipment, "I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like what you pulled off yesterday. Don't overthink this. Trust your instincts and do what you do best." The encouragement meant more to Marcus than Johnson probably realized. Earning respect from experienced operators like Johnson validated everything Marcus had worked toward in his military career. As the mission began, Marcus deployed an array of technical equipment that represented everything he had learned during the week. Instead of relying on a single approach, he planned to use multiple complementary techniques to systematically defeat the enemy's defensive systems. The first phase involved electronic reconnaissance to map the enemy's surveillance and communication networks. Marcus used sophisticated signal analysis equipment to identify the frequencies, protocols, and vulnerabilities of each enemy system. What he discovered was both impressive and daunting. The enemy had created a layered defensive network that included redundant systems, automated responses to intrusion attempts, and countermeasures specifically designed to defeat the types of electronic warfare techniques that Marcus had used successfully in previous exercises. "This is going to be much harder than yesterday," Marcus reported to Rodriguez over a secure communication channel. "How hard?" Rodriguez asked. Marcus considered the technical challenges for several minutes before responding. "I need to essentially defeat 5 different defense systems simultaneously while avoiding detection by 3 separate surveillance networks. It's theoretically possible, but I'll need perfect execution and probably some luck." "Do you want to abort and try conventional tactics?" Rodriguez offered. Marcus thought about his grandfather's lessons about perseverance and problem-solving under pressure. "No, sir. Give me 30 minutes to see what I can accomplish." What followed was the most complex electronic warfare operation that Marcus had ever attempted. Instead of trying to defeat each enemy system directly, he developed an approach that used the enemy's own systems against each other. Marcus began by identifying subtle vulnerabilities in how the different enemy systems communicated with each other. By carefully injecting false data into these communications, he could cause the systems to report conflicting information and gradually undermine their effectiveness. The technique required incredible precision. Too aggressive an approach would trigger security protocols and expose his intrusion attempts. Too subtle an approach would fail to create meaningful degradation of enemy capabilities. Working methodically through each system, Marcus began introducing carefully crafted false data that appeared legitimate to automated security systems but created cascading failures in the enemy's defensive network. After 20 minutes of patient work, Marcus achieved something that surprised even him. Instead of simply penetrating the enemy systems, he had gained partial control over their entire defensive network. "Rodriguez." "This is Chen," Marcus whispered into his communication device. "I don't just have intelligence on enemy positions. I think I can control their security systems." The implications were staggering. If Marcus could control the enemy's own security systems, the rescue mission could be executed with minimal risk and maximum effectiveness. "Explain what you mean by control," Rodriguez requested. Marcus outlined his capabilities. He could disable motion sensors in specific areas, redirect surveillance cameras, alter alarm thresholds, and even manipulate the enemy's internal communications to create confusion and misdirection. "Can you do all of this without them realizing they've been compromised?" Rodriguez asked. "I believe so," Marcus replied. "Their own systems will show everything functioning normally, but I'll be controlling what they actually detect and report." Rodriguez made a command decision that demonstrated his confidence in Marcus's abilities. Instead of executing their planned conventional assault on the compound, the team would rely entirely on Marcus's electronic warfare capabilities to achieve mission success. What followed was unlike any military operation that any of the observers had ever witnessed. Marcus guided the assault team through the enemy compound like a puppet master, disabling sensors moments before the team reached them, redirecting cameras to avoid detection, and even causing the enemy's own alarm systems to malfunction at critical moments. The enemy guards never realized they were under attack until the assault team was already in position to rescue the hostage. By the time they understood what was happening, the mission was essentially over. The entire operation took less than 40 minutes from initiation to completion. The hostage was successfully rescued, no team members were injured or detected, and the enemy force never understood how their supposedly impenetrable defenses had been so thoroughly defeated. In the command center, senior officers from multiple branches of the military watched the operation with amazement and concern. The capabilities that Marcus had demonstrated represented a fundamental shift in how special operations could be conducted. Captain Morrison turned to her staff and made a comment that would later become legendary in special operations circles. "Gentlemen, what we just witnessed is either the future of warfare or a very dangerous new vulnerability. Either way, we need to understand it completely." During the post-mission debriefing, Marcus explained his techniques to a room full of senior officers, technical specialists, and intelligence analysts. The questions came rapidly and covered everything from the technical details of his methods to the strategic implications of such capabilities. Master Chief Thompson asked the question that everyone was thinking. "Chen, how many people do you think could learn to do what you just did?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "The technical skills can be taught, Master Chief. The creative problem-solving and ability to adapt quickly under pressure are harder to develop, but I believe there are people in every technical field who have the potential for this kind of work." Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez stepped forward to address the room. "What Petty Officer Chen has demonstrated this week represents exactly the kind of innovation that our new technical support program is designed to develop. He's shown that properly trained technical specialists can provide capabilities that fundamentally change what's possible in special operations." The formal debriefing concluded with Captain Morrison announcing that Marcus would be recommended for immediate acceptance into the Advanced Technical Support Program. Additionally, his techniques would be studied and potentially incorporated into training curricula for special operations units across all branches of the military. As the week concluded and participants prepared to return to their regular assignments, Marcus found himself surrounded by SEALs and other operators who wanted to learn more about his background and techniques. The same people who had laughed at him just 5 days earlier were now asking for his contact information and expressing interest in working with him on future operations. Chief Johnson approached Marcus during the final equipment turn-in. "Chen, I owe you an apology. When you first showed up here, I thought you were just another desk jockey who didn't belong in our world. I was completely wrong." "No apology necessary, Chief," Marcus replied. "I understand why my background didn't immediately inspire confidence." Johnson shook his head. "It's not about your background. It's about results. What you accomplish this week will probably save lives in real operations. That's what matters in our business." Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez pulled Marcus aside for a private conversation as the exercise officially concluded. "You've exceeded every expectation we had for this program. The Navy is prepared to offer you opportunities that most people never get to see." Rodriguez outlined a career path that would involve advanced technical training, deployment with special operations units, and eventual leadership of technical support teams. It was everything that Marcus had hoped for when he first volunteered for the exercise. "There's one more thing," Rodriguez added. "Your grandfather served in Korea, right?" Marcus nodded, wondering why Rodriguez had asked about his grandfather. "I did some research after our first conversation," Rodriguez explained. "Your grandfather was awarded the Silver Star for actions during the Battle of Chosin Reservoir. He was a radio operator who maintained communications for his unit under impossible conditions and helped coordinate a successful withdrawal that saved hundreds of lives." Marcus felt a surge of emotion hearing about his grandfather's military service. He had known that his grandfather was a veteran, but the details of his service had never been discussed. "He would be proud of what you accomplished this week," Rodriguez continued. "You're following in his footsteps in ways you probably don't even realize." As Marcus packed his gear and prepared to leave the training facility, he reflected on the incredible transformation that had taken place over just 1 week. He had arrived as an unknown technician hoping to prove himself worthy of working with elite operators. He was leaving as a recognized innovator who had demonstrated capabilities that could reshape special operations. The young sailor who had been laughed at by Navy SEALs had not only proven his worth, but had earned their respect and admiration through creativity, determination, and technical excellence. More importantly, he had opened doors to opportunities that would allow him to contribute to missions that could make a real difference in protecting national security. Marcus understood that the real challenges lay ahead. Advanced training would be demanding, operational deployments would be dangerous, and the responsibilities of leadership would require continued growth and learning. But he felt ready for whatever came next. His grandfather had taught him that the best victories were achieved through preparation, intelligence, and perseverance rather than raw strength or aggression. This week had proven that lesson in ways that Marcus could never have imagined. As he walked toward the transportation that would take him back to his regular assignment, Marcus smiled, thinking about the phone call he would make to his grandfather that evening. For the first time, he would have military accomplishments worth sharing, and he knew his grandfather would understand exactly what they meant.